Hey there, toy collector friends and Transformers fans alike. I'm the time-travelling toy collector welcoming you back to the channel, or to the channel for the very first time, and this is the Transformers Generations Titans Return edition of Powermaster Optimus Prime and Autobot Apex, who we'll look at in a moment, who from my childhood was better known as Haikyuu, or in an alternate timeline, something else entirely. But more on that later. So I'd normally show the packaging at this point. I can bring it in, but to be honest, it's really just one big glorified, let me come back a bit. It's just one big glorified set of product shots, which I can give you a bit of a rundown on if you like. But it is essentially a Titans Return figure with some Titans Return limited artwork. It's mostly everyone in Titans Return seems to be a headmaster, which is really interesting to me because again, headmasters weren't really something that I was involved with. It was sort of after my time along with Powermasters and all that whole range of Powermasters, Target Masters, etc. So I didn't collect them, and some of you may have noticed on my Instagram pages that I was debating whether to get Powermaster Optimus Prime Titans Return or Powermaster Optimus Prime Generation 1, the commemorative reissue, which also came with the God Bomber Apex, armor, and also Haikyuu or Jinrai, or whatever we might want to call the actual Powermaster. And of course, I ended up going for the only logical choice, which is get both. So I'm going to start by looking, of the two of them, we're going to start with the Titans Return version, because I have a few other Titans Return figures that I've looked at in the past. And actually, you know what? This is really a strong and robust figure. I have a couple of curiosities, which I'm going to talk about. For anyone that doesn't know, I don't do the on-screen transformations just because this tends to be the first time that I play with the figures. Is when I'm doing a live experience like this, and I try to capture it. And I know the first time I do it, I get riddled with anxiety that I'm going to snap something, break something. Oh my goodness me. I'm sure many of you know that feeling. There are lots of excellent online YouTube tutorials for transforming Transformers. There are, so you'll easily find some people that can do that for you. So I'm more to give you my taste, my flavour, and my experience and appreciation of the figures and what they can do, rather than subject you to the torment I engage with going through transforming them. There are occasional exceptions to that, as you'll see if you do sort of follow any of my Transformers Through Time playlist, but here and now I'm gonna stick to showing you the three modes, starting with Optimus in his robot mode. Now again, Powermasters were known for having a really interesting gimmick, which was that they had an engine feature that was a combining figure. I think originally they were supposed to be Nebulons mostly, that would combine or transform into, whether it was the head or it was the gun, or in the case of Powermasters, understandably, the engine. And that unlocked certain hidden features, etc, etc. So this is Powermaster Optimus Prime from Titans Return, and bizarrely, he doesn't come with an engine feature. He does come with let's call him a Titan Master, but the Titan Master that he comes with is actually making him into a sort of pseudo headmaster, which is interesting, but not what you'd expect from a Powermaster figure. It kind of flies in the face of what Powermasters did. However, this is a redesign of the original Powermasters, the G1 Powermaster figure. And when you look at it from that point of view, you go, well, actually, yeah, structurally, I totally see how this super robot mode has the integrated cab and trailer section all in one to produce a super robot. Now, what's very interesting, and I will mention this a bit later, I'm sure, is that what he doesn't have is a separate Optimus mode, a separate Optimus Prime. The cab is integrated into Powermaster Optimus Prime. Now, in the G1 version, and indeed I think, but others out there may be able to correct me if I am wrong, historically, all of the cab sections have been able to separate and form their own Optimus Prime figure, or Orion Pax figure, depending on the range, and then combine to greater or lesser extents with the trailer to create, if they're going to create anything, to create the bigger mode. This guy literally does that. He has the trailer and the cab, which is what I'll show you secondly, and it is beautiful. It is a lovely toy, but it's what interests me, or what surprises me, or possibly even disappoints me. I'm just trying to give you a bit of a 360 while I'm yakking about it. Is the fact that he doesn't have that sort of separate cab version of Optimus Prime. I think he may be the only edition of this of Optimus Prime where that doesn't happen. As I say, I could be wrong, so do let me know in the comments if I am. But yeah, so it was a bit weird. It's a bit weird that it doesn't have a Powermaster feature, and it's a bit weird that it doesn't have a separate standalone figure for the cab. I'll kick myself if I found out that it does and I just didn't learn how to transform it. So what it does have is, again, I'm not going to take you through all the various points of articulation, but the arms do what the arms should do. You do get some sideways rotation. You can't really get much in terms of shoulder activity, but you do have some sideways manoeuvring. That's the same on both sides. There isn't really any waist articulation due to transformation, but you do have pretty articulate knees and hips, and some thigh rotation there. I am going to say that one of the key things that remind me of his Generation 1 iteration, not that I ever had the Generation 1 iteration, is that, like most Generation 1s, there's very limited articulation. However, this guy does have far more articulation, as you can see. Just doesn't have the features of a Powermaster. One thing they do give us is a base mode, and that's the thing we'll look at third and finally. And I think it's a pretty decent base mode. I'll reserve judgment as to whether it's one of the best base modes till once we've had a look at the G1 version's base mode as well, because I've seen from some other online reviewers that the G1 base mode for Powermaster Prime is actually pretty nifty. And I know from already having a little bit of a play with this and looking at the online reviews, there are I have a couple of display considerations for the base mode that are more sort of custom, my personal custom, rather than what the instructions are going to tell me to do. But anyway, that's for the future. Here and now, we have Optimus in his robot mode. And again, let's get in nice and close. You can see the detailing there on his face. If I hold it back, you might be able to see some of the eyes. See, the trouble is his eyes are quite deep set because this is not his head. It does rotate, so it's very well engineered to allow you to do that. But actually, it also does this. It's a helmet. And underneath we have what I would suggest is a face sculpt for Orion Pax. We just don't have an Orion Pax body within the set for him to really optimize, if you excuse the expression. But of course, as he is the Titan Master, he does separate and then transforms really easily into Apex with his little arms, his little head, and I'll give him a bit more screen time later. Of course, a great big head on his back, but that was kind of the thing with headmasters mostly. But yeah, so he folds up nicely to become the head. The head pops into that little tab there, and then Optimus's helmet will come over the top and fit there, giving you the full Optimus Prime head experience, and quite right too. He does have some nice weaponry that fits neatly into his hands, and also for additional support fits into the slot in these sections that are supporting his arms. There's a fair bit of hollowness in his arms, which is disappointing. But again, this was a Titans Return figure, and they were still, I think, reimagining some of their engineering skills. Again, don't get me wrong, from an engineering point of view, this figure, looking at the instructions, already very. I don't have quite the same concerns I would normally have about transforming a figure, especially a big figure like this. And whilst he feels nice and sturdy, I'm very confident that he's not going to snap at the first opportunity, which is again one of my recurring fears. So a really nice sculpt. I'll take you up and down the body very quickly, and I'll zoom in a little bit as well to assist with that. You can see those lovely Autobot logos on his shoulders. There's a lot here that's in keeping with both the original Optimus design as well as the G1 Optimus Powermaster Prime variation. So you can see lots of lovely sculpt detailing on his chest there, the dispersal of the windows there, really nice detailing on his legs and the shins, right the way down to his feet. And you can see that lovely reminiscent, for those who know the G1 figure, you can see how the detailing here and the sculpt work here around the legs and around the arms is very reminiscent of the G1 figure. I mean, as an homage, it's really, really excellent. Even the detailing on those side arms. I'll give you a bit of a look at the back as well. There's not a super amount of kibble. There is a bit of open space. You can see that's the wheel section for the actual cab of the vehicle itself. His legs are nicely sort of panelled up, which I'm a fan of. But you can see that's likely to become the trailer. Spoiler alert. But again, you can see all that lovely detailing and panel work around the back of the figure that really shows that they've taken their time to give us the best possible Powermaster Prime that the Titans Return engineering and price points could give us. He does have a bit of a, as with a lot of bulky folk, he does have a bit of issue with his inner thighs rubbing together, so he can't actually stand with his legs together, but not a big deal. He can adopt and be supported in a range of other poses, and I have so far not experienced any difficulties. I am going to do some photographs in all three modes, you'll be hopefully pleased to hear, which I will append to the end of the video, so hang on to the end and you can see what he looks like from a toy photography point of view. He does come with a collector's card. I'm not big on the collector's card, but it incorporates the tech specs and a nice picture of him. But yeah, I suppose my biggest 2 points, which I'm sure I'll reflect on again later, is that for a Powermaster figure, he doesn't have the Powermaster features. In fact, he has Headmaster features, and the cab section doesn't transform into a standalone Optimus figure. Otherwise, I'd show that now. But otherwise, as you can see, this is a really, really solid, excellently solid, excellently posable, and excellently playable with Optimus Prime figure. So without further ado, I will now transform him into his vehicle mode, and then we'll look at the base mode, and then I'll give you some closing thoughts and see whether or not this belongs in your collection. But in the meantime, I will transform him off screen in the blink of an eye into his vehicle mode, and let's see how that goes now. And as if by magic, here he is, all transformed up into his heavily armoured vehicle mode. Now, as I've already mentioned, I never had the Powermaster Optimus Prime G1 version, and I really love the shape of this and the heft of this guy. There's a couple of things that I'm not as keen on as I am, as I would like to be, rather, but I'll come on to that in a second. But in terms of a vehicular mode, I really love this, and it has a couple of really neat gimmicks as well. I love how it is representative of the original G1 toy. As I say, didn't have it, but know what it looked like. It sort of came out at that point in time, as I've mentioned, where I was sort of waning in my Transformers collections, and it kind of was part of a phase that completely passed me by. But looking at the aesthetic of it now, especially when I'm looking at sort of vintage, what I would call vintage toys, it really stands out, and that's why I was struggling between this Titans Return edition and the G1 reissue, and ended up obviously going for both, as we know. But I really like this. I mean, it has cab articulation. The cab is not detachable, I hasten to point out, as you can see there. It is not a detachable item. And I think, for me, this is one of the very few issues that I have. And I know I've touched on it already, and I dare say it'll come up again in a bit. But for me, the fact that it isn't detachable, and the fact that it is, we don't get a standalone Optimus Prime or Orion Pax even figure, is a bit of a shame. I think it's a missed opportunity, because I know the G1 version, of course, did give us a standalone, separate Optimus figure that became the cab, and then we had the trailer section that became the base, and they both combined to give us the Super Optimus Prime Powermaster figure. And this doesn't quite give us that. It gives us this really good vehicular mode, which I really like. I love the detailing on the structure. I love the art that really does scream G1-ness. I love the detailing, as we can see here. I'm going to pick it up in a second. I'll pick it up now. Let's be doing it. I really love the detailing of the cab. It takes the Optimus design and then elevates it slightly. It's a shame we can see through into the back trailer there, particularly as there's nothing really to see. Although on the plus side, there's nothing to see, so there's no visible head syndrome or anything like that creeping in. I think structurally it's really great. You can see the door there and the steps there here on the cab give you a real clear suggestion of just how big and hefty this is supposed to be. This is the door there, access port there. It's a really great surface sculpt. Lots of elements here to be true to the original. Massive Autobots insignia there. The more access panels here. I mean, really, it's a great design, and we do around the back have we've got a little bit of Optimus feet syndrome sticking out, but it's forgivable. We do have some limited access to the back here. If I set that down there, you do need to ever so slightly pop the sides to access it, and they are conjoined, but they can come down like this, and it gives you a bit of, oh, there we go, knocking myself over with excitement. Where are we? And it gives you some access into the back. Not a huge amount of storage space, to be honest, and you would run amok of these sections here, but those sections here would also hold in a slightly smaller scale vehicle in there. But it's a feature you can use, and again, depending which generation of figures you want to have, there's scope to deploy them. But yeah, for me, I think the biggest shame is we don't have a transforming cab that gives us an additional Optimus figure. We do have his guns, which we can tab into the top here, which is a nice useful feature. There's also the opportunity really to tag them onto the side near the wheels as well, if that was how we wanted to present him. But we are advised in the instructions that the best way to do it is to tab them into the top. We also have, as you're already aware, we have the interesting Headmaster figure, which is Apex, Autobot Apex, who will feature. He can feature quite well in the base mode, and so I'll come back to him for that. He does have standard articulation, wibbly wobbly head there. Just trying to get him in focus. Otherwise, relatively decent detailing. He's got conjoined leg syndrome, which is very G1. and limited arm rotation as well. So I won't bore you with too much of that. He is what he is. But what he can do here, apart from stand on the top rather randomly there as Optimus drives along, is he can fit, and this is a nice little feature, so let me just bring this down a tad so you can see it, and I'll zoom in a bit as well just so it's easier to, it's hopefully easier to see. He can fit here, so we can open up the front of the cab. Let's just move that for now so you can see, and there's a little what becomes a little seating area with a notch there. If you put him into a sort of seating position, the notch there will tab into that one. Not so easy to see with the camera in front of your face, I must admit. But he can, there you go, he'll fit in there quite nicely. Will you? Please fit in there, Apex. Don't be a nuisance. Don't be a nuisance. Where's that? Oh, it's because it's turned around. There we go. Tab him into there, like this. And then he quite happily sits in the cab area. We'll bring this back round. And we can then close that up. And now Apex can sit in the driver's seat as Optimus drives into battle. And he's quite delighted to do so. So that's a nice little play feature, which I'm very appreciative of, and it also helps because it means you can keep all of your accessories in one place, so they don't get lost over time. So yeah, a really lovely, free-rolling, hefty feeling vehicular mode, very reminiscent of the G1 toy, very reminiscent, of course, of the original G1 Optimus Prime with some upgrades, and I think this is in the cartoon continuity, this is the body that Optimus was given after his first body was destroyed, and he believed he was a computer game simulation. But for more on that, you might want to check out some other reviewers who will be able to give you much more chapter and verse on the history of Powermaster Optimus Prime and where the body came from in canon. No word of a Powermaster Optimus Prime in the new Transformer ranges, but who knows what's around the corner. But I'm very glad that I've picked this up. So without further ado, I'm now going to transform him into his base mode, and we can see what that looks like. Quicker than you can say, Decepticons retreat. And here we have Powermaster Optimus Prime from Titan's Return in his base mode. Now, as I said before, I've never had a Powermaster Optimus Prime. And it was the base mode was one of the things that really intrigued me. I'm really fascinated to look a bit more into some of the best base modes that Transformers figures can give us, particularly the ones I've got. So when I was looking at whether or not to get this, the base mode was absolutely one of those items I was really looking into, just to see the various different levels of playability, displayability. Now, I think there's quite a lot of scope here. Now, this is the standard configuration, and I will move it about in a little bit. I'm going to sort of draw your attention down to the left-hand side here. You can't see terribly well. I'm just going to move this down and zoom in a little. But we have got Apex, the Headmaster Apex here. I'll just pick him up again. Bless his little heart and his little proverbial cotton socks. So we can place him here, or we can pretty much place him anywhere. We've got some pegs where we can stand him up so that he can engage anywhere in the platform. And I really like it. I think it's a really nice platform. I'm going to pull out slightly here. There's a couple of things from a sense point of view that I don't quite get. One thing is a design flaw. These guns here, it does come with a hole there. You can't really see it, but there's a tab on the top of that, and the instructions kind of say you should be able to tab that onto there. Well, newsflash, you can't. So that, and I think that really does miss a trick, because that would be a really good place to have a central gun station, because obviously if it is compatible with sort of this scale of figure, which it absolutely is, and you can have them all over the place. There's another port there where we can see him in action. It would be great to populate it, but a couple of things that I'm not super content with is the flatness of these, and I like it a little bit either tilting these inwards or ever so slightly tilting them outwards, so not so we necessarily start to see an awful lot of arm that is currently obviously behind there, but just to give it a sense of, I don't know, less two-dimensionalism as we're sort of facing it. Another thing I don't quite get is the platforms on the side, and the thing I don't quite get with the platforms on the side is, and I'm going to sort of move it around a little bit so I hope you can see this, and I hope Apex doesn't do a dive bomb here, but we have these ramps which I really like. I really like this sort of ramp effect, but you can't access the ramps because of the arm arrangements that are there. So for me, that's a little bit of a strange one. So when I was mucking about with it, you can, and it is feasible, I don't know if it's feasible within this display area, but it's feasible in the real world. If you actually take those, yeah, it's not too bad. If you take those side sections out a bit, they can actually still function in the same way, but you now have access to those ramps. Yeah, so we can, I'll just flip it up, you can see. So those ramps are now actually viable from my point of view. They're kind of slightly more viable, and you can just tweak the configuration slightly, you know, however you want. I mean, sure, ultimately it's going to be your choice. You can display it however you want. And I now sound like some various other Transformers collectors online, but I just think it gives you options in terms of display and playability that perhaps aren't quite as apparently there. I'll just pop back a bit. If you clump it together, I totally get the official configuration is clumping it together, but for me it doesn't quite work. So I like it to be able to access those ramps. I think that makes more sense. I think I would slightly angle these just to give me a little bit of additional detail and additional, you know, a little bit of difference to how it actually looks. I will now zoom in a bit just so you can get a sense of the scope of the playset. I call it a playset. I do really like the detailing that we get here. I like that we have this on a stand at the back, and it's opens up so it is somewhere else for them to sit. It conveys the impression. I have to slide it forward slightly just to re-level that out. Apologies as I smash into the camera. And I think that gives us that sense of observation ports, which we can then imagine are little Micromasters or Powermasters, or whatever we want to call them, depending which range we're sighting. I love the detailing within the guns area so that we can sit Micromasters like Apex over here. I like the detailing that becomes apparent when we're looking at it in this base mode. I like the versatility. I like the versatility it gives us. I like the space we have within the platform here, and this front guarded section. So there really is, for me, there really is, you know, an awful lot to appreciate and to like with this. Just for the sake of closing this one up, though, I will sort of put these back in the standard configuration. Oops, I knew I was going to do that. I could sense it. Just so they are, you know, as our Transformer Masters, I don't necessarily mean the Quintessons, would have it. But yeah, so I'll pop Apex in there just so he can have a little sit down. Oh, don't be loose. So yeah, so this is the actual configuration that they would have you have. Actually, it's not, because these should be straightforwards, as I've mentioned already. But for me, I like the fact you can play a bit with it. You can change it around. It's not rooted in stone quite how they are representing this final base mode. But for me, it's great. There's a lot of playability there. There's a sense of levels. There's a sense of depth. There's a sense of broadness of engagement. I really like it. Is it the best iteration of Powermaster Prime? Well, I don't know. I wonder if we'll get another one in Legacy. Who knows? I do know that so far this is something that I really like. I will have a closer look at the reissue of the G1 Powermaster Optimus Prime and his base mode, and we can have that discussion on another day. But so far, this base mode does work for me. It gives me options, it gives me flexibility, and that's what I like in a Transformers toy. So overall, does Powermaster Optimus Prime with Autobot Apex from the Titan's Return range of Transformers Generations toys have a place in your collection? Well, to be fair, only you truly know that. Personally, I'm really glad I picked it up. I hummed and hawed for a long time. I watched a lot of online reviews. I also, as you probably know, as I've mentioned I think already, looked at the G1 Powermaster Optimus Prime, picking that up. Then I was tossing up between the two, which was the one I was going to go for. And then because I was in the fortunate position to be able to, I went for both, because ultimately that to me made more sense. And we'll have a look at the other Powermaster imminently. But I really like this. It's solid. You can engage with it. I can see it being part of a bigger set with Fortress Maximus and Metroplex and Skylynx and those kind of characters. I do wish that the cab would transform into a standalone figure, and I feel that we miss out a little bit on the fact that he doesn't. And I keep wondering if I'm missing a trick, and that somewhere there's a secret feature that will allow the cab to transform into either Orion Pax or into a standalone Optimus. Evidently, so far, I've not found that to be the case. I don't think I'm going to, disappointingly. But hey-ho, it is what it is. For me, a fantastic figure, and if I have in any way helped shape your opinion of whether or not to purchase or not to purchase Powermaster Optimus Prime, then I'm happy with that, and I'm glad that I've been able to not influence your decision, but give you some information that will help you make an informed choice. If that is the case, please do like this video. Do smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel, because you never know what's coming next. It could be some more Transformers, it could be something from Star Trek or Doctor Who or Battlestar Galactica, or old school G1 Transformers, or Star Wars, or it could be anything. There could be some very unexpected stuff around the corner. So yeah, why not subscribe and turn on those notifications so that you never ever miss a future video. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for staying with me for the last 20 or so minutes. You have been a fantastic audience. This has been Powermaster Optimus Prime with Autobot Apex, aka High Q, and I am, as ever, the time-travelling toy collector, reminding you that a thing of beauty really is a toy forever. Transform and roll out.